Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and it's looking like things are really picking up here. Now, of course, Nintendo themselves hasn't confirmed anything. They are staying as silent as possible, even being a no-show at the Game Awards, but the leaks keep coming. It seems every day there's something else that's coming out about the Switch 2 from different accessory makers, and it does have me wondering, is Nintendo even happy about this? What are they thinking behind the scenes? Are they going to respond in some way? That remains to be seen, but regardless, it is looking like recent leaks may be pointing towards the overall direction of Switch 2, and this might even offer us a little bit of a hint towards the core gimmick. I have a bit of a theory here, and I find it to be quite exciting, so we're getting into all of that today. But before going forward, let me take this moment to ask that if you do enjoy my content, to please subscribe and hit the notification bell, and if you're unsure, watch through this video and then consider subscribing and hitting that bell. So I'll be getting into the theory on the core gimmick for Switch 2 in a bit, but first I want to talk about the latest in the Switch 2 leak situation. And so over the last few months we've talked about different things, but even over the last few weeks, more and more different accessory makers have put out announcements regarding their accessories for Switch 2, and some of these accessories have shown us kind of how the Switch 2 looks. Like, look at this one. There's this cover here. Some people have talked about how there might be some sort of AI work here, but the point is that it shows the Switch 2 under it. We even see the U-shaped kickstand here. But there's another brand that perhaps has a little bit more notoriety that has been showcasing their accessory for the Switch 2, D-Brand. Here is their website. They are talking about the Kill Switch case for the Nintendo Switch 2. They are literally using the name Switch 2, and you can see the model here moving around. And, I mean, it looks like a cool accessory, and we see clearly some sort of Nintendo Switch-looking device behind the case. Now, it is a little bit different. If you notice, there is the extra button here, and we can't really get a comparison here in terms of size, but they're literally saying Switch 2, and we've seen from all sorts of other leaks and accessories, but the Switch 2 is definitely much larger than the Switch 1. Now, here are some other close-up images of the accessory here. We can see this. We can see this one. This one's a little bit smaller. I'll probably zoom in a little bit so you can see it better. And then here as well. And we get a good look at the U-shaped kickstand, another example of the U-shaped kickstand. So that's probably there. We also see the buttons you can press to detach the Joy-Cons. So that is all there. But things are becoming a little bit more of a bigger deal here, because according to Insider Gaming, the CEO of D-Brand, Adam Ijaz, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, I'm not sure, has confirmed to them that the actual design of the Switch 2 is what's in the case in the animations. So what they're saying is that, according to the CEO of this brand, D-Brand, what we are seeing through this case is the Nintendo Switch 2. So then that has us wondering, okay, so does the Switch 2 just look like a larger Switch 1 OLED with the original neon Joy-Cons? And I think that part is where things are a little misleading. In terms of the overall shape and size, all of that is accurate. However, when we take a look at what was explained to Verge, they said, it seems D-Brand is reasonably confident in its case. But we asked CEO Adam Ijaz to be sure. He says D-Brand has actual dimensions, not an educated guess, based on a 3D scan of the real hardware. And so, this is a 3D scan of the real hardware, and from that I'm going to interpret that they don't necessarily have on display here the colors of the console, the textures of the console. There may be some details that we still don't know about, but what we are gaining a clear view of here, this is actually a better imagery here, is the shape of the console, the size of the console. Here we see some dimensions that are discussed as well. it shows that the previous handheld is that where the Switch 2 should measure 270 millimeters wide, 116 millimeters tall, and 14 millimeters thick, with the console portion taking up to 200 millimeters worth of that width. AndresRestart also says the kickstand will still measure around half the console's height at around 55 millimeters, a diagonal measurement of the cover glass support. Previous rumors that it'll have an 8-inch screen, so that's more evidence of the 8-inch screen, which to me is very exciting. Also here it's explained that his understanding is that the Joy-Cons are magnetically attached with an eject button, as we've understood from prior leaks. But are we really learning anything new here? Well, when taking a look at this imagery here, if you look at this right Joy-Con, you don't see where the IR sensor would be. There's not like that black spot. But as I argued earlier, it's possible that certain details like that will not be clear because it was just a 3D scan of the dimensions, and the IR sensor might just be totally flush with the Joy-Con as it is with the current right Joy-Con. But what I think may be a bigger deal here is the fact that this is more evidence that the console may be called just straight up the Switch 2. Of course, they could just be using this as a placeholder, but it is interesting that it's also more evidence of the U-shaped kickstand, which we have discussed in the past has been leaked by other places, for example, Ninspider. But even before Ninspider talked about a U-shaped kickstand and also a fatter dock that would house potentially an extra cooling fan, perhaps better power supply, which might facilitate more powerful visuals and performance in docked mode, there was a supposed Chinese leak where these details were already discussed, including the U-shaped kickstand, but it was also suggested that on the back of the console, it straight up said Switch 2. Now, this 3D scan doesn't show necessarily those kinds of details because that wouldn't be so evident from just a 3D scan that may not be showing us textures or colors, but there is an increasingly growing argument that the console is going to be called Switch 2. And so, the core aspect of Switch 2 may just be the fact that it is a direct follow-up to the Switch. Everything we see from the design is very clearly more Nintendo Switch. Switch 2. Which isn't really too crazy of a core gimmick. Nintendo has recently confirmed that they will be transferring over Nintendo accounts, so if you had a Nintendo account that you used with your Nintendo Switch or even prior hardware, you'll be able to transfer that over, perhaps with all the saves and data attached to it, and backwards compatibility as well. All of your Switch games will be playable on Switch 2. And so the core gimmick of Switch 2 may just simply be an overall improvement or evolution of the Switch. And I have noticed that a lot of people have been expressing disappointment with what we're seeing of the design of Switch 2. It looks pretty much like just Switch 1, and some people may find it disappointing, but some things I would like to point out here. We may not know the colors of the console, we may not know the textures, there may be colored buttons and things like that may be pretty cool, and we do know that the console is dramatically larger than the Switch 1, and so there are going to be some clear differences there. We also have the U-shaped kickstand, and hopefully there is some differences with the textures and colors that make it a little bit more interesting. I'm still pulling for the colored buttons. We shall see. But if Nintendo's going to go in this direction of essentially improving upon the Switch in a very obvious, straightforward way, they may want to make something very clear. That it has fixed the issues of Nintendo Switch 1. And perhaps the most controversial, biggest issues of Switch 1 are two things. It's power and Joy-Con drift. With power, I think that one's obvious. It's going to be more powerful, games will not be as dated, games will run better. But Joy-Con drift is something that hasn't really been fully addressed for Switch. Perhaps with Switch 2, Nintendo will do something to rectify this problem, and also find a sly way of marking the Switch 2 to have improved analog sticks for the Joy-Con, so people can go in resting assured that there won't be any sort of drift this time around. Which brings me to a recent patent that people have been discussing as of late that may also be a bit of a leak here. So, Mike Odyssey, shoutouts to him, who recently pointed out that there is this patent about joystick technology that Nintendo could use for Switch 2. Now, something that should be pointed out here is that patents don't necessarily prove that that tech will be used in a future console or game. It happens sometimes, but it's not necessarily the case. However, While Mike Odyssey did a great job of discovering this patent and bringing it to the forefront of the conversation now, this has been something that's been around for a little bit. So going back to summer of 2022, July 1st of 2022, Nash Weedle, a leaker that we've discussed on this channel a few different times, who has done some things right, some things in the past we're not so sure on, so for sure take it with a grain of salt, but here they use the wording, Leak Express. Nintendo's next controller would feature force feedback on the sticks. This would be thanks to a ferrofluid and magnetic field interaction technique. We will be able to feel how difficult it is to climb a slope or even how an enemy grabs us. And here's some of the images from the patent. We see the apparatus for an analog stick. This is how they look when you remove them from the controller without the little thumb pad. We see it from a side profile view there. And here we see, I guess, the coils or the ferrofluid magnetic stuff that's going on. And yeah, more patent stuff there. I don't fully understand the dynamics of this. However, when looking up what this supposedly is, a magnetoheliological fluid, MR fluid or MRF, it's a type of smart fluid, usually a type of oil, and when subjected to a magnetic field, this can increase the viscosity to the point where it essentially becomes a viscoelastic solid. Essentially what this means is that you can control the varying level of viscosity of this fluid, so it can go from liquid to solid and in between, and so ultimately what this amounts to is control sticks resistance, force feedback. So some other examples, we've discussed the possibility of an Ultimate Star Fox in our Ultimate series for potential games on Nintendo Switch 2, where you could be flying around, and with control sticks that have this type of technology, you could be trying to fly up or down, and you're going to feel resistance as you pull back on the R-Wing. Or perhaps you're playing a modern version of Wave Race, and as you try to move around, you feel some extra resistance because of the waves. Or if you're Link in the next Legend of Zelda and you're exploring a snowy area, walking through the thick snow, you're going to feel a little bit of extra resistance there. And so I think this would be a great technology that would help to individualize the new Joy-Cons for Switch 2, something that could add something to games that we have not seen before that will improve our overall immersion, but at the same time, while implementing this technology, they might be able to also simultaneously address Joy-Con drift. And so Nintendo may go into Switch 2 marketing the overall evolution of this console and how it improves on a variety of things of Switch 1 while maintaining an overall similar form factor, but they'll point out some improvements like potentially the control sticks. And shoutouts to @JasonSBMOC on Twitter, who created this Switch 2 logo, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. The Switch 2 logo is an analog stick, and here you see this little gif of what looks like an analog stick moving left and right. But just think about this for a moment. You look at the logo they put here, Nintendo Switch 2. Half of this Joy-Con stick, or control stick, is the 2. The other half would be the S. S for Switch, 2 for Switch 2 together forms a Joy-Con. And so what if this patent that Nash Weedle is calling a leak from a couple of years back that talks about using this magnetic fluid to create resistance in the control stick is a core component to the evolution of Switch 2. It's how they help to individualize the console, while also, in a subtle way, letting people know that there won't be Joy-Con drift anymore. I think this would be a fantastic idea, and I think it would be a great way to market Switch 2 in a manner that people would find neat and interesting and very Nintendo, which might address the concerns of what we're seeing so far from leaks about the Switch 2 looking very samey. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.